Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro. Glad you could join us on a Wednesday. So it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's a horrible story of a 25-year-old young man who, in my personal opinion, was murdered, chased down by two white men with guns. And whether he was jogging or not, or whether he was looking through a house that was under construction or not, to me is not the point. I still think murder is murder. But with that being said, going back to the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman situation, there are a lot of people that believe that Trayvon Martin was painted out to be the perfect kid who had never done anything wrong and a great student, and we learned later on that that was not the case. Does that mean that it was justified that he was killed? No, I don't think so. But the media does portray certain situations and certain people as saints when they're not. There's a new video that just came out in the Ahmaud Arbery case. Now, we've learned that he took a gun to school. He was arrested for that. And now we're learning of a shoplifting situation. Now, does that justify what the McMichaels did? In no way, shape, or form. That's for you to decide. I don't believe so. But in this new video that I want you to listen to, this is Ahmaud Arbery caught shoplifting. It's an arrest back in 2017 as he was accused of wheeling out a 65-inch TV with his friends. That's hard to put in your pocket. I don't know how he thought he was going to get away with that. I think for starters, we could say that this Ahmaud Arbery kid, sadly, I know he's 6 feet underneath the ground now. It's terrible. Was not a very bright kid, but I want you to listen to this audio.
He does not sound overly.
I want you to listen to this audio.
Or he was very ambitious. Maybe he was just too ambitious.
This is back in 2017, his arrest. Have a listen to this.
Your TV is in there.
Dispatch, show me 23 in the park on Walmart.
I had a receipt, bro.
Where's the receipt at?
Receipt.
Stay, I didn't stay seated.
I got money.
You know what?
Bro.
You know what?
I'm not a bro.
I want you to lay on your stomach. Lay on your stomach.
I'm not laying
Lay on your stomach.
So which one of you guys
Lay on your stomach. You're under arrest. You're under arrest for shoplifting. Yeah, you have the right
I
to.
did not steal no TV, bro.
You have.
All right, first of all, the guy doesn't know how to speak English. That's number one. And number two, he's aggressive with police officers. This isn't the first time.
Bro is a word.
This isn't the first time he was aggressive. Number three, there was no receipt. That was a blatant lie. And I like it how the owner of the store is saying, by the way, I'm not a bro. You can hear him say that in the background. But listen, he's been aggressive before. So the person I wanted to have with us on the line right now, his name is Joel Gilbert. He is the filmmaker of the Trayvon Hoax, which is now offered free on YouTube, by the way, for people to check that out. And he has some opinions on how some people are portrayed in the media. So I want to get his take on that. Joel, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Joel? Been a while.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. All right, so Joel, in your documentary, I don't really want to talk about the Zimmerman case, but in your documentary, you make the case that, Trayvon Martin was considered this great kid who did great in school, and then when you actually look at, his record and getting kicked out of school and so forth, the media certainly portrayed him a different light. So I want to talk to you specifically about this Ahmaud Arbery case. Do you think there are some similarities there? What are your thoughts?
Okay. So, look, with the Arbery case, all the facts are not known yet. Every day stuff comes out. We haven't heard from the defendants either, so I'm trying to stay open-minded. I think that, as you said, that's kind of the lesson that we learned from the Trayvon Martin case or even the Michael Brown case, where the media comes up with a slogan or a narrative, Skittles and iced tea or hands up, don't shoot. In this case, it was jogging while black. And then what happens is eventually when it gets to court, we find out, there's an investigation, there were false claims, false witnesses in the case of the Trayvon Martin case, and false narratives. And I don't think creating a hoax or false stories advances the cause of civil rights. I think it sets it back. So I want to be open-minded and not prejudge this case. I can tell you there are a lot of similarities, which I can go through, which are pretty interesting. First of all, the media circulated an angelic photo of Arbery when he was in high school with a tuxedo, rather than a recent mugshot, for example, where they did the same thing in the Trayvon Martin case. He was 17, 6'3". They circulated a 5-foot-tall, 12-year-old kid, really cute kid, in order to create this false narrative. Another narrative is they say, why was there no arrest? As if there was no investigation, as if an arrest is a constitutional right. In fact, you only have an arrest if there's probable cause. And the DA, Barnhill, from this place in Georgia, issued a letter with a thorough investigation. He went through the thing piece by piece. That's why there was no arrest for several months. He said that Arbery attacked and tried to take the gun away from McMichael, and that there was a struggle over the weapon while Arbery was beating him, and he had the right to use deadly force. So the same thing in the Zimmerman case. The Sanford police did a 3-week investigation and exonerated Zimmerman, and it was only when the media narrative blew up that the politicians were forced
Joel, can I
to arrest
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to, before I forget, I want to interject here. See, I disagree with what you just said in this aspect. I think these two cases are very different when it comes to this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're breaking up, and I can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me okay now, Joel?
That's a little better.
You got me? Great. Okay. So I was just going to say, listen, in the George Zimmerman situation, he wasn't chasing after Trayvon Martin in a car, and he also didn't have his weapon brandished. See, I think that is a huge difference in this case. And you're right, by the way. We don't have all the evidence, but based on just the video alone, what we know from Zimmerman is he had the gun, it wasn't seen by Trayvon Martin. Very different. With the McMichaels, they were chasing this kid down in a truck, and I'm just going by the video, and then they had their guns brandished. So I think that is a very, very big difference in this case.
Yeah, there's a lot of differences. It's a little bit more like the Michael Brown case where somebody had a weapon, a police officer, known to have a weapon, and if you look at that video, the McMichaels are parked in their truck ahead of Arbery. They're no longer chasing him, and the DA cites that in his letter exonerating the McMichaels. He said Arbery approaches the truck from behind, goes to the right of the truck, and rather than just continuing straight, he suddenly turns 90 degrees and attacks McMichael and tries to take his weapon. So there's some similarities in the Michael Brown case. Like, why would you go after someone with a weapon? So this is going to come out in court eventually, but what happens is these narratives are created by the media, typically in an election year, to motivate black voters, and that's the manipulation that takes place. I can assure you there are justifiable homicides all over the country that are ruled self-defense every month. Sometimes it's black on black, sometimes white on white, sometimes white on black, and we only hear about these and they blow them up with these false narratives typically right before an election.
So, Joel, let me ask you this. Arbery apparently took a gun to school when he was in high school. He also shoplifted tried to get a 65-inch TV, wheeling it out of a store. I don't know how you do that and get away with it. Should that matter? Does that matter to this case?
I don't think so. What matters, for example, I spoke to the forewoman of the Zimmerman jury, and she said it came down to when Zimmerman was having his head beat in the ground for a couple of minutes and choking on the blood from his broken nose, was he afraid for his life when he fired the single shot? And they found him not guilty based on that. I think this will also come down to a similar thing. The jury will say, when McMichael was standing there and Arbery approached him and tried to take his weapon away and punched him in the face, was he justified in trying to protect his life? I think that's what it'll come down to, not what Arbery did 5 years ago.
Now, what about the fact that these two gentlemen pursued Ahmaud Arbery in a vehicle while he was on
Gentlemen, I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Joel?
A little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, what about the fact that these two gentlemen pursued Ahmaud Arbery for 4 minutes in a truck while he was on foot with weapons brandished, despite the fact that they were not police officers? Now, there is a text message that Gregory McMichael had from one of his friends who basically told him that he could make a citizen's arrest. But again, he was not a police officer at the time. How does that factor in?
It's going to factor in. I mean, I think those things all come into it. We're kind of learning more every day. But what I'm saying is I think some of these narratives, jogging while black, they hunted him down. I mean, even LeBron James, I wrote an article about this. LeBron James tweeted, "Can't go for a damn jog. We're literally hunted down every day." Now, that is just outrageous and not true.
I agree.
This doesn't happen every day. That's why it's so shocking to everybody. And LeBron James did the same thing in the Trayvon Martin case. He got played by the media narrative. And played means, in the Urban Dictionary, it means made a fool of. And he made a fool of himself defending China also.
Yeah, listen, I don't disagree with you there. I just want to say, Joel, for the record, we covered that last week, and I was very critical of LeBron James' comments. I thought his comments were idiotic, and he has a huge platform, and he shouldn't be saying that African Americans are hunted down every time they leave their house, because it's just ignorant.
Well,
that's what it is.
I thought they were actually dangerous.
Yeah, they can be dangerous. So, Joel, I'm with you on that, but let's talk a little bit about this Arbery case a little bit more. So let's just assume, for hypothetical reasons that Arbery was committing a crime. By the way, there's no evidence to support the fact he was. But even if he was committing a crime, does that give two people the right that are not police officers to chase somebody in a car with guns brandished, even if Arbery started the physical confrontation? And it does appear like he did. I don't think that still means that McMichaels are innocent here. Now, does that mean they should both be convicted of first-degree murder? Probably not. And I've said on the record, and listen, I'm going to be honest here, I think Zimmerman could have been charged and could have been convicted with involuntary manslaughter. I think they went for too much, and that's why Zimmerman was not convicted. I believe in this case, I think it's going to be very difficult to convict the McMichaels of murder. However, if they're not chasing this kid down with guns brandished in a truck, it never happens. Just like with Zimmerman. If he doesn't get out of his car, if he stays in his car, that confrontation never happens. I believe you can get the McMichaels on either manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter based on the evidence that we do know right now. What do you say?
I'm not an expert in the law. I only read the DA Barnhill wrote this 5-point letter, and that's part of my main point is it was thoroughly investigated and a legal opinion was delivered by the local authorities as opposed to the media narrative which says they screwed up the investigation, they're trying to protect him, they didn't arrest him. That's not true. There was a thorough investigation, and I can only tell you what the DA said. He went through it point by point, and he said, it's online, he said they had probable cause to believe he committed a crime. They had a right to make a citizen's arrest. They had a right to open carry in the state of Georgia. So far, the law seems to be on their side. It sounds kind of shocking to me. I never, saw someone commit a crime and track them down with my gun. I mean, it's a pretty shocking thing. But legally, it seems like the DA said they were on solid ground. But I still think it'll end up being when Arbery took a sharp left turn in front of the truck and attacked McMichael and tried to take his gun, was McMichael in fear of his life? And that's essentially the Zimmerman case also came down to that one single moment when he was getting his head beat in the ground and choking on his blood and being smothered. When he fired the shot, was he legitimate in fear of his life?
And that's fair, but one thing George Zimmerman did not do was block Trayvon Martin from walking down the sidewalk. What the McMichaels did do, based on the video, is they blocked him in the middle of the road and tried to stop him. My understanding on the law is that this kid Arbery had no reason to listen to these two guys, and he could have just kept going. Now, you make a valid point with going 90 degrees, but with that being said, the McMichaels blocked him right in the middle of the road. I think that's also an important part to this case as well. I mean, I think we're going to learn a lot more. I think you're absolutely right, Joel. We don't know everything in this case, but I think what we do know, and I find it hard to believe that police officers and law enforcement would say, you know what, make a citizen's arrest and chase somebody down with guns. Here's the second thing I would mention, and I think this is very important, Joel, and you're a smart guy. I think you'll understand this. As you know, McMichael Sr. had a lot of ties and a lot of friends in law enforcement. I think it would be naive to say that his ties in law enforcement had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that they were not arrested that night.
Well, we can only go by the DA letter and the facts that had come out every day. Things kind of change a little bit in the video, and I just don't know. It's going to come out in the court trial, but I think this jogging while black, he was just a jogger and was gunned down in cold blood, is not going to end up being the reality.
Well, no doubt it's a fluid situation, but when this took place, police officers actually went to Ahmaud Arbery's home and told his mother that he was involved in a home invasion, and that was just not the case. In fact, that story was corroborated up the Brunswick Police Department. What are your thoughts on that?
You're breaking up a bit. Can you just say it one more time?
Go ahead, JD.
No, I said this is definitely a fluid situation, no doubt, with information coming out every single day, but that same day that he was murdered, the police department actually went to his mother's house and told her that he was involved in a home invasion, and that was not the case. And this story was corroborated up the Brunswick, Georgia Police Department. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are I never heard that before. So these things over time we're inundated with the media narrative. We're inundated with the attorney for the family, just like Benjamin Crump would make these incendiary statements. The media simply repeats what the attorney for Arbery's family says, and we don't know if that's true. And then now we're told, well, the police said this to the mother. The mother said he was jogging. All these things get put out in the public, and then we form in our minds what happened. And only months or a year or so later, things turn out to be different. So that's what I caution with the Trayvon hoax is don't let the media prejudge it for you, because more and more things keep coming out. We haven't heard from the defendants. I heard, for example, that the defendants actually released the video thinking it would exonerate them, which the DA agreed. So there's a lot to learn, and I think, as I showed in the Trayvon hoax, it took 8 years till I found out that the key witness, Rachel Gentile, was a fraud. She wasn't on the phone with Martin. She wasn't the girlfriend. It was a frame job. So we're going to find out more as time goes on.
But and you mentioned that video, how Gregory McMichael ordered it to be released. He actually didn't take the video. William Roddy took the video, and he made a statement that he released the video. Didn't mention McMichael's name, but he did it because he wanted to stop a race war. So that's very interesting as well.
I want to bring this up because I think this is important. And Joel, you might disagree with me on this, but that's fine.
I lost you guys.
To me,
I lost you guys again.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, Joel.
I got you.
You got me. Okay, so you might disagree with me on this, Joel, but to me, it's very simple, and I hate to compare it to George Zimmerman. If Zimmerman doesn't get out of his car, that confrontation never happens. If the McMichaels are not following this kid in their truck, this confrontation never happens, and you have two men that are still alive today. Now, am I putting 100% of it on George Zimmerman? No. I never have. I defended George Zimmerman for pulling the trigger. What I didn't defend George Zimmerman is following him and not staying in his car. When you're not a police officer, you shouldn't be following somebody, whether it's chasing somebody in a truck with guns or following somebody on foot. Number one, it's dangerous. Number two, you're not law enforcement and you're not trained. George Zimmerman should have never gotten out of that car. Number one. The McMichaels should have never been chasing this kid in a truck. If those two things don't happen, then these two men are still alive today.
Well, I can tell you that hundreds of thousands of times every day, people, if they see somebody in the neighborhood, and they're actually on the phone with the police, they try to be maybe overly helpful and say, oh, I see him over there. Let me tell you where he went. While you could say, well, we wish they weren't trying to be overly helpful, 100,000 times a day that happens. But Trayvon circled back and mercilessly attacked and beat Zimmerman within an inch of his life. Arbery, even though he was followed or, they thought he was committing a crime, as much as that complicated and made the situation worse, Arbery, according to the video and the DA, took a left turn and attacked the guy with a weapon. So did Michael Brown, attack the police officer. So everybody could have done a whole lot better, but certainly attacking someone and trying to steal their gun or beat them to death is probably the worst thing and shouldn't have happened. I mean, Trayvon Martin, if he didn't like Zimmerman or got mad at him for snitching on him, smoking pot, he could have cursed him out. He could have come up and pushed him. He could have done a lot of things, but attacking the guy and jumping on him and beating his head in the ground was a mistake that unfortunately cost him his life.
But Joel, I agree. But Joel, I don't think you can find even 100 cases per day or even per week of two people in a truck chasing down somebody with guns. Now, you're right. The George Zimmerman case is different. I'm sure there's a lot of people,
especially in a state or in a town with a history of systemic racism.
Yeah. Zimmerman aside, let's forget about that for a second. You make a valid point there, but with the McMichael case, I don't think you can find many cases throughout the country where two men in a truck, both armed with their guns brandished, are chasing after a human being. I just don't think that specific scenario happens very often in this country.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty rare. And if you figure I read, again, we hear different things every day, but I read they were yelling at him to stop. They want to talk to him, and they had the police on the phone. They were trying to get the police to come and talk to him or arrest him, even for a crime that they supposedly witnessed, which I don't know too much about either. And, you can just see in the video that Arbery went to the right of the truck and could have kept running. And I'm sure, had he not taken a sharp left and tried to take the guy's gun away, that there would have been no shots fired. But everyone is very unhappy. I'm sure the McMichaels wish they hadn't done it, and it is extremely rare for people to track down someone they think that is committing a crime and try to hold them for the police. I don't know anyone that's ever done that.
Yeah, me either. Well, let's say that he did keep running, or that he would have kept running. I think they would have kept chasing him. It would have lasted longer than 4 minutes. Why would they have stopped chasing him at that point if he would have just kept running? But my real question is, are you looking at this potentially as another documentary for you to do?
I'm not. I'm thinking of it. Look, we got to see what really happened and get a lot more information. But I do see it as another, what I coined the term Trayvon hoax, where the media runs with all these narratives. Jogging while black, LeBron James is in on it, Benjamin Crump is in on it, and they try to create this narrative to motivate black voters to come out and vote Democrat. And I see that as a parallel.
Fair enough. Well, Joel, I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us about this. Certainly, I appreciated your film, The Trayvon Hoax. And again, you can see it free on YouTube. I highly recommend it. I've seen it a couple times. Joel, you're a very good filmmaker, great documentary, and we appreciate you taking some time to join us and giving us your perspective. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for having me. And you can get to that film by going to the TrayvonHoax.com. It's linked up there.
Great. Thanks, Joel. We appreciate your time.
Thanks again.
That's